All right, let's get right into it. We're going to go back to a really intense period in Iraq, a time when a new and frankly terrifying threat was emerging. It wasn't targeting soldiers, it was targeting civilians, and it turned this whole security crisis on its head, turning everyday people into political pawns.
So, if you think about it, what's the most fortified place in a war zone? You'd probably say the international airport, right? I mean, for the coalition forces, this was the main gateway, a symbol of security. But what happens when that fortress, that safe zone, is compromised from the inside?
And that's exactly where this story starts. Not with some big attack from the outside, but with a threat that was already inside the wire. And this wasn't just, a couple of bad actors. This was the very foundation of security being systematically rotted from within. 3. That's how many high-level employees at the Baghdad International Airport were arrested by the U.S. military. Just 3 people, but they were in positions of serious trust, right at the nerve center of the entire coalition's operations. Now listen to the language the military used here. They weren't just talking about taking bribes or something. They believed these guys had set up an actual base for kidnapping operations, right under everyone's noses, using their jobs as cover inside what was supposed to be the safest place in the country.
But the problem at the airport? Well, that was really just the tip of the iceberg. This internal corruption was part of a much, much bigger and more frightening trend that was just sweeping across Iraq. A sudden explosion of kidnappings targeting foreign civilians.
And just look at this breakdown. It wasn't one group targeting one nationality. We're talking about citizens from China, the US, Japan, Britain, Germany, South Korea. Pretty much anyone could be a target. You can see right here the sheer scale of this crisis. It was a clear and deliberate tactic being used by all sorts of different militant groups. Numbers and tables can feel a bit abstract. So to really understand the human cost of all this, we need to zoom in to focus on a single personal story. And that's the story of an American civilian who got caught right in the middle of this storm. Thomas Hamill. The speed at which this happened it's staggering. On a Friday, Thomas Hamill, a 43-year-old dad of 2 from Mississippi, is just doing his job, driving a truck. By Saturday, his face is on televisions all over the world. And by Sunday morning, his entire life is hanging on a political deadline tied to the actions of the whole U.S. military. In the video they released, a journalist asks him what happened, and those are his words. That's it. You can just feel the shock and the terror. He's in the back of a car, he's surrounded by armed, masked men, and he gives this incredibly short, controlled statement. And the threat that came with that video, it was horrifically specific. His captors made a direct reference to the brutal killing of 4 other American contractors just days before. So this wasn't some vague threat. It was a crystal clear, chilling promise of what they would do if their demands weren't met. So, this is the really crucial point to understand. These abductions weren't just random acts of violence. Not at all. They were a calculated, strategic part of a much larger campaign. Kidnapping had literally become a weapon of war, and it was designed for maximum political impact. And when you break it down like this, the cold logic is just undeniable. The demand is purely political. U.S. troops get out of Fallujah. Japan, pull your troops out of Iraq entirely. And the threat? It's deeply personal and brutal. Harm to one individual, or in the case of the Japanese hostages, a threat to literally burn them alive. Civilians were being used as direct leverage to pressure entire governments. So as you can imagine, all of this created this overwhelming, suffocating atmosphere of chaos and fear. For the families back home, for the governments trying to figure out what to do, for anyone on the ground, information was almost impossible to come by, it was unreliable, and often totally contradictory. And this is what that uncertainty looked like in real time. Deadlines would just pass in complete silence. News channels would report a release, giving everyone a moment of hope, only for it to be denied minutes later. You had governments saying they thought it was highly probable their people were dead, but they couldn't even confirm it. And through it all, Thomas Hamill's fate was just a total unknown. It was pure psychological warfare. So all of this really forces us to ask a tough question, doesn't it? This tactic deliberately blurs the line between the battlefield and regular civilian life, turning human beings into nothing more than tools of policy. It really makes you think, beyond all the strategy and politics, what is the true cost of conflict when this is how it's fought?